You are watching the Elevation Mentor Show, and today I have a very special guest. Win, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me.
Okay, I'd like to start off by having you tell us who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm Win Willis. I'm a real estate developer out of Baltimore, Maryland. We develop single family homes and multifamily homes, primarily in West Baltimore. Um, it's a family-owned business, been around for about 30 years. I took over the reins and expanded our business about 7 years ago. So I'm just super blessed that we're able to impact our community and the place I grew up. Um, in a physical basis, but also just giving people a place to live that's attainable.
Okay, that's interesting. Being a developer, what is it like being a developer? Like time
Oof.
commitment and things like that.
Yeah, I would say it's a 24/7 job. Every day is different, depending on the requirements that you may have, whether it be a lender or whether it be a community member, whether it be your development team, your architects, your engineers. So it's really you're dealing with so many different people, politicians, and trying to figure out how to get everybody on the same page. So I say the majority of my time, depending on what stage we are in the early stage of developing, is usually spent with a lot of community, a lot of politicians, just making sure that everybody's on the same page, answering questions, and trying to prevent people from tearing my head off for trying to build and improve our communities.
Okay, that's interesting. So you're dealing with a bunch of different people, like politicians and
Yeah, everybody, banks, everybody. So it's our day to day is really depending on who you're dealing with that day or in that moment. So it's never the same, honestly.
okay. Could you talk a little bit about Baltimore as a city?
Oh man, Baltimore as a city, it's called Charm City for a reason. I think we have amazing people first and foremost. The second thing I would say about Baltimore is I think it's probably the last city on the East Coast that has not been built. It's a like high density or have a lot of properties that are like high rises and things like that. I think it's the last opportunity on the East Coast for people to invest as it builds now, and we've hit our stride. So we're hour away from four international airports. We have one of the largest ports on the East Coast. We serve, as far as logistically, 2/3 of America, as far as logistics and deliveries. Um, we're close to power being near DC. We have a majority of our government agencies that run our country are located in the Baltimore, the metro area. I think Baltimore is one of the great cities for food, for culture. We have a long-standing entrenched culture, which can be good and bad sometimes, but I think it's good for people to come in and feel the charm of Charm City. So Baltimore is an amazing city. And I think it's starting to hit a stride now and get into its resurgence that it had, maybe about 70 years ago, 80 years ago.
Okay. All right. Because I know some people like to bash cities, so just wanted to.
Yeah, right. I think they try to bash Chicago and stuff too. I think um, all cities have to do better at marketing their positives, because the negatives are not as bad as what where the television or Instagram says. To be honest, I think for our city, when people get here and then they actually spend time here, people tend to stay, because just a great city. But we have to do a better job here of keeping people here as well. So it's not just all the marketing. We got to do our job as well.
Okay. Wayne, can you talk about some of the projects that you have in the pipeline?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we have about, I would say now, 8 projects. So we have 3 single family developments, luxury homes. One of them is where I grew up. And it's amazing now that we can actually put a luxury home here, a 3-story, 4,000 square foot house. And then we have outside of the metro area in Howard County, we have 2 luxury homes that will be almost a million, or will be close to $1 million homes, about 800, $900,000 homes. And we have a pipeline of city lots that we're purchasing as well, to do single family homes. As far as our multifamily projects, we have, our smallest one is 8 units. Our largest one is 285 units. We have over maybe $100 million in our pipeline, give or take whatever valuation is as far as whenever we do our assumptions. But I think our main project right now that we are working to finish and get under construction, if not hopefully in this year, is a 53 unit development. It's been praised for having not only a food forest, but a patio, park, a gym, community room, and just being very community centric and very health centric. And we're using that as I would say an example of how to not only integrate the community, but integrate the landscape, integrate all the things that we need so we can have a building that provides the needs, all the needs of members of the community and residents that live in the building. So this will be an example. I'm pretty sure once finished, we'll probably maybe win some design awards, and I would be excited. And I'm excited for this project because it will be one of our first multifamily projects that of this type of style, and probably one of the first in the area that will have an urban farm and food forest in it. So we hope to be an example so people can steal an idea and take it to their city as well.
That sounds good. Impressive. And then I heard you mention an urban farm also.
Yes, so that property in particular will have an urban farm. We'll try to incorporate that in all of our buildings. So if it's a high, like we have 2 mid-rise buildings, 2 6-story buildings, we'll have a rooftop deck, and they'll have planters and farming there on the rooftop. So our goal is to kind of mix health, wellness, mix resident services that probably need home ownership, financial literacy, all the things I think people need, and let that be our competitive advantage for attracting tenants, and not just like things that you see normally like gyms, pools, and game rooms and things that really don't hold any value. People, quite frankly, really don't use. I think the most used things a lot of times are the dog park and maybe the gym, but we'll have those things, but we want to add services on top of it so we can retain residents and make sure that we're getting people to the place they want to be as well, more all encompassing when it comes to how we set up our housing.
Okay, Win, sounds good. What do your current investors look like?
Man, it's a blessing that 50% of our investors are actually Black women. So I always tell people that Black women have done so much for us, because they supported us early, saw the vision early, and took the risk with us. The other, I would say, other half are, well, I would say 80% of the people are actually from Baltimore, lived in Baltimore, live in Baltimore currently. So, I always say that that's a good thing, because it lets people know that people who either from here or live here are invested in seeing this place get better. And then, we have an appraisal firm as well. So a lot of our appraisal money we've taken and invested into some of our projects, if not all of them. So I'm always super blessed that we were able to take some of our profits and say, hey, let's do something positive, reinvest it into our community, as well as be able to take some of these projects from really nothing and to bringing them to the point we are now, where we're going to break ground.
Okay. So when are you accepting more investors, and what kind of data do you give to them before they invest? And also, what kind of investors are you accepting? Do they have to be accredited, or like how much, things like that?
Yeah, I would say currently we're not, just because we're finishing up what we're doing this year, waiting for, I guess, the Federal Reserve environment to kind of change as far as with rates. We are looking at a lot of new projects that in different asset classes, different variations, and so we're looking at really just great opportunities. And then I say at the top of the year, we'll start accepting more investors. What I usually do is for better or for worse, we try to overload people with as much information as possible, because I believe that transparency as well as having all the facts will allow you to make an informed decision. Whether people take those facts and read them and do their due diligence, we always tell people, take it to the smartest people you know, do your own due diligence, and let us know what's wrong. The reason why is because I think if we miss something, we want to know so that we can correct it. And then it becomes not just a rigid document, but a living document that can breathe and be corrected, because that's what this is. It's a constant change of updating your assumptions and things like that. So we usually provide people with our a data room that we have in our back office data room. We will send them a link. They'll be able to sign up and be in our data room, and they'll be able to see all the offerings that we have. And then they'll have pretty much the same thing. So usually it's the company overview, gives all our projects, our company history, things like that, resumes of any major person working on the project. We'll have a pro forma, which will essentially give the finances and how the project will work, and we'll have what I call really internal research, but it's really a 150-page document, usually give or take, of just all the information about the property, valuation about the land, valuation about the site, whether it's being from a rental perspective or from a sale perspective, and anything else that they would need, market research, that's there. Then we have like a market rent study that we normally do, and that's usually about 12 pages to be able to make sure people understand what the market rent is, and kind of what we have. We'll have usually our plans and feasibility studies to show what yields we can have on the property, as far as what type of building we'll have. And then I'll put what we call our highest and best use case study, which I think is extremely important, because what we always want to show people is not is how we buy properties. And it's not this property in particular, this case study in particular is not about our property, but it's about properties that we've seen, and that we get the case study of how it's not being used to its highest and best use. So it may be a retail store that could be a 300-unit apartment building, or for grocery stores. So just being able to show people how we kind of think and bring them in our way of thinking about development and investing in general. But that's not what we do. And as far as to be honest, accredited investors, like we'll take non-accredited investors. But I think what we used to do is we would work with people and say, hey, 5,000, 10,000 non-accredited, we'll take a certain amount of non-accredited investors. Mm-hmm. But I think we're to the point now where sometimes you get sometimes a non-accredited investor who doesn't understand what investing is, don't understand that you can lose your money, doesn't do the due diligence, looking through the documents, doesn't ask the questions that need to be asked when they're going through the process in our meetings. So we kind of are trying to readjust how we address non-accredited investors, because we want to make sure that people, when they do invest with us, even though it may be one person who may say, hey, you gave an update, I don't understand this, but it's a lot more people just won't reach out, even though you send them the updates monthly or quarterly. And we want to make sure that people are engaged. So we're trying to figure out that, but we have done that in the past, which we have a certain limit of non-accredited investors. But we do have an investment minimum now of about 25,000. Before it was about 10,000. But as we're moving on, it just doesn't make sense sometimes. And this is what we're trying to figure out. It's how we can keep it to a certain level, but it just sometimes doesn't make sense unless the project is small enough to accommodate it from a percentage standpoint for people. Like, we want it to be a win-win situation, and not you have one of 1% of a project and you gave $1,000. So we always want to make sure we're doing it in a way that's conducive for both parties.
Okay. So it sounds like you're honest and transparent. You tell them the risk, and then you lay out all the data.
Absolutely.
So when I heard you mention interest rates, do you think this is a good time to be building or buying property?
I think, well, what my father used to tell me is there's always a great time to buy. Just the question is, what price are you paying? Right. So I do think it's a great time to buy. I just think that prices may not have adjusted to the point where it makes sense for people to buy. So for us, we have a parameters that where we want to buy it from a price per unit standpoint. So we really stay in that. So if you come to me and you're trying to sell it to us for 15,000 a unit, we just won't buy it. We want to buy it 1 to 10,000 a unit. We want to find great opportunities. We're more akin to like maybe a Navy SEAL team going in and getting going on a particular mission and executing. We're not really trying to get everything, but just the things that make sense for us. I would say, as far as in this environment, I would say because of the supply and demand dynamics, I think people should buy because I think prices will continue to increase because no new supply will be able to come on, especially for single family homes. For other asset classes like office and multifamily, office it's a little different. You're going to see drops in prices and maybe some bargains. But in multifamily, I think, it would be it's going to be harder to build. So for us, we're looking at it where you were adjusting to away from market rate to doing affordable because the interest rates are better. But also, it takes so long to get a development done that by the time we begin construction, interest rates are probably going to be lower. So I think it's all about just the timing, and development takes a lot more time. So, and if you have the ability to wait, most developers will just wait a year and take their time because it's more about getting the best deal and the best returns than it is about just putting up a project and getting it done.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, I just got three more questions.
Mhm.
What would you say to a brand new person who sees you and wants to be a developer? How did they get started? Like, what are like maybe like the first two steps?
Ooh, to be honest, I would say I did it the hard way. So I would say first go work for a development company, a small or medium-sized one where you can get a lot of exposure. So that would be the first if I was somebody, and if I could do it all over again, that's how I would do it. Or what I would say is go get a skill within the real estate industry, take your money and then do it. 'Cause that's kind of what we did, which was um, we had an appraisal business and my father had already developed before. But for me, I had it. So I took my earnings from the appraisal and I bought a piece of property for 30,000 and I built a house on it and went through the process of development. I took a risk. So I would say first thing is go learn from somebody or go and read everything you can. It's a lot more out than when I started. But I would say the second thing I would say is that with those earnings, go take a risk on your own. I think that's the big thing. I see people who've worked for big companies for 15 years, big developers, and yes, you've completed projects under their banner, but you haven't done anything for under yours. You've taken no risk, right?
Oh.
So I think that people need to take risks because then it's gonna teach you everything because
Mhm.
you're in the game. So I think sometimes I actually just had this conversation. Some people are on the bench or on the or like coaches on the sideline, like they're in proximity to the game.
Mhm.
They're not in the stands, but they're close to the game. They're in it in a way, but they're not on the court, right? And I think sometimes when you work for a big company, you are in proximity to the game, but your bosses and their partners are in the game. You need to be on the court, and I think sometimes you have to take the risk to get on the court and win or lose. And I think that's really what I would say as far as the second thing is just take the risk, and that will teach you everything you need to know about yourself and about the process.
Okay, so go do it and take the risk.
For sure.
When I'm going to transfer over to love real quick. So,
Okay.
are you single or married?
I'm married.
Tell us one thing that you learned about money as it pertains to relationships that could help somebody else.
Oof. I would say running your household like you would run a business in a sense from the money standpoint, which is, can your house be a profitable household? So if me and my wife makes 150,000, I make 150,000, make 300 together. What are our expenses? What are we bringing home? What are our profits? And what are we reinvesting into ourselves, into the family? It sounds, you know, a little bit cold-hearted in a sense, but when it comes to your relationship and how you guys function from a money standpoint, I do think it's important for us to know what our income statement is as a couple, so we, you know where our money's going, and also we can invest it in our unit goals or our unit or our individual goals or individual development, whether it be therapy, whether it be the gym, whether it be me and my wife are doing IV therapy now to try to stay hydrated and stay, you know, alert, like just those things, and how does that work together? So that's one thing I will learn, is trying to figure out how to us to run our finances like a business, so that we don't have to think about them in the terms of emotion, so we can separate that and we can focus on each other and how we can make ourselves better.
Run your finances like a business.
Yeah, because I just a small story. I remember my wife was eating out every day at work, and she's like, "Well, I don't know where my money went." And we went through everything. It was like, "Well, I went to Chick-fil-A, and went to Starbucks, and went here." And if that anxiety about not having all your money or retaining all your money led to issues between me and you, let's divorce the money part and say, okay, how can we come up with a better strategy on how we're running? Can we be profitable as a family, so that now you don't even have to think about any of that? And then all we have to do is change our habits. So let's get coffee at home. Let's cook. I'll pack up the food, and, you know, you can have it tomorrow. I'll have it tomorrow. We're perfect. And now, you know, she was spending $600 a week
Don't
on
tell her,
food.
don't tell her now, Win.
Huh? You said what?
Don't tell her.
Oh no, I'm honest about this stuff. Like, yeah, it was a lot, right? And when you have kids as well, it becomes even more. So I would say, like, just us being able to know, like, okay, what is our, you know, net income as a family? I think it was extremely important to how we doing, and allowed us to do other things that thought was positive.
Win, that doesn't sound like any fun. But I know what you mean though.
It isn't though, but when you set that discipline, we're able to have fun. We're able to go on trips. We're able to travel. We're able to, you know, have peace of mind, which I think is number one. So, you know, we're able to we spend a lot of time going out to dinners, traveling, and things like that. So it gets, the fun is there once we set our discipline.
Right. Discipline. Okay. Well, that's good to know. All right, Win. So, where can people reach out to you if they want to learn more about real estate development, or if they want to invest with you later on in the future?
Yeah, I would say the easiest way to get to me is I guess through Instagram. So Win Willis on Instagram, and I say for investment, we have our investor relations at Bull Dev Co. So Bull, Bull, like the animal, DEV Dev like development, and CO company.com. So if they reach out to our investor relations team, we'll be able to get back to them, get them in our data room. But and then also I always encourage people, just reach out to me via DM. People can text me at 443-825-0363. So I'm pretty easy to get to. Whether I try to get back to everybody as quick as possible, but I'm pretty easy to get to. I do this stuff every day. This is my life. So any chance that I get people to invest in our community, invest in Baltimore City, I'm always available for that.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you for being on the show, and I'm proud of what you're doing. Baltimore.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All righty.